Hey, family, and thanks for joining us for another episode of Black Gay Table Talk. I'm Keenan, your host for the day, and today we have Dwayne Queen joining us to share some insight into his world and what's going on. Dwayne, how are you?
I'm good, Keenan. How you doing?
Not bad. Thanks for asking.
Good.
So I'm happy we have you right on the show. Um, you're doing a lot. You're doing a lot in the community.
Listen, a lot is an understatement, and I think before I decided to sign on for all of this, I did not anticipate what a lot was going to be, but it definitely is. But it's all good work. It's all good work.
All good work. True. So, as it stands now, you're on the board for the different pride, well, for a few different pride committees
Yes.
there,
So
right?
I'll run them down for you. So I am on the board of directors for the Atlanta Pride Committee. I'm also on the board of directors for the Atlanta Black Pride Committee, and we can talk about the difference between the two. I think most major cities have two different pride organizations. I'm also on the board currently for the Out Georgia Business Alliance, which is kind of like an LGBTQ better business bureau for the state of Georgia.
I love
Um,
that.
it helps kind of navigate relationships between entrepreneurs, corporate, kind of one central location for all LGBTQ business owners. So I also sit on that board as well. Um, on top of that, and we'll talk corporately, I'm sure, but I'm also the president of Delta Airlines LGBTQ internal organization. It's a ERG, BRG kind of work as well for corporate side.
I love that. So, do they often cross paths?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you said that because a lot of people was very they were very uncomfortable with the thought of me being on all of these different boards. I apparently ruffled a lot of feathers
Really?
when it was announced that I had joined the Atlanta Pride Board because people couldn't fathom the idea or the thought of someone being on all the boards and assuming that it was a conflict of interest, but it's actually not. It really, they all kind of work together and they do all the same kind of work, which is undergird the LGBTQ community in some form of fashion. But it also allows me to work through all of the relationships and connecting relationships. You'll be surprised. It's actually that
Yeah.
some of these organizations don't even have relationships with each other. So for me to be the intersection or the conduit for that is I'm surprised someone else hasn't done it by now.
Right. Wow. And I would think so too. You'd be a good way to marry the different entities and actually get more work done, right?
And
Yeah.
and to show it's possible, right? Like there are major cities that have two different pride organizations, obviously, and let's the elephant in the room, a black one and a white one. You have your white pride, and we still go and support the white pride, and some of them still come and support ours, but there are two separate organizations, and I think if there was an opportunity to work together, what does that look like? How
Hmm.
can you achieve that? And I'm not saying that we have to infiltrate each other's organization for what they actually do. For example, I'm not asking Atlanta Black Pride to infiltrate Atlanta Pride's Pride Celebration weekend. That's not what I'm asking. But I'm asking, hey, can we do some programming throughout the year so that the community comes together?
Hmm. Hmm.
There's opportunity. You create opportunity for things like that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So, what is your background? When did you find the calling to show up in the way that you're showing up through the boards and the work that you do?
I truthfully, the phone didn't ring. I didn't. It wasn't a calling by any means. I didn't get a call and say, "Hey, I think you need to be, an activist or a representative or a community leader." I didn't get any of that.
Hmm.
Truthfully, when I started, I was an actor. I started out in film and television, and I think most notably for our community, a lot of people will recognize me from The Skinny. If you think about the movie, Patrick Ian Polk's movie, The Skinny, I was one of the rapists along with Derek Briggs in
Okay.
Patrick Ian Polk's movie, The Skinny. And so that's kind of where people were like, oh, that's Dwayne, and didn't realize how the magnitude of what that looked like. So if you remember the movie, that was Jesse Smollett and his college friends. They all came together for Pride in New York,
Mm-hmm.
and all the debauchery that happens during Pride weekend. And that opportunity was a great opportunity to kind of just connect with folks. But that was the kind of very beginning of, just people recognizing who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So outside of that, I left New York. I lived in New York for 10 years. I moved to Atlanta. I started working with Delta Airlines. And just happenstance during the pandemic, somebody said, "Hey, you want to be on this board?" And I was like, "Okay." I mean, I don't really know what it's like to be on any boards. And they're like, "No, just come to the meetings, give some input." And this was the Atlanta Black Pride Board first. And I realized they did not have any trans programming at all. And so I said, "Well, will you allow me to create something for the trans community?" And I created the Trans Life Awards, and that is now in its fourth year of honoring the transgender community in all facets of entertainment, corporate, community, etc. And so I was like, I'm pretty good at this community thing.
Mm-hmm.
So what else
Mm-hmm.
can I do, right? And then join the Out Georgia Business Alliance, and now we're with the Atlanta Pride Board, as well as doing some internal LGBTQ work with Delta.
Got it. So, who is Dwayne at home?
Dwayne at home is chill. Home is really just kind of sanctuary for me. It's a safe space. It is, you let your hair down. It is, it is very much, what we eating, what we watching, um, just being at home and just enjoying my space, solitude, recharging. I think because of being such a community leader in that aspect, I'm always, you never know who you're going to run into, you never know who you're going to talk to, you never know why you or how you have to be on. I have, my calendar is always full of different things going on throughout the weeks and the weekends, and so this is just a safe space for me to recharge, or escapism. Even I'm silently, and I'm telling people this a lot more often, and I used to keep this a secret, but I'm also a little, like, I'm a gamer. So I like
Really?
to do a bit of escapism because I have so much going on, forward facing, that I'll just get lost in like a little Mario situation and be okay.
Mario? So, no lie, like there was a full out like Mario battle in the house last night.
See, I'm telling you, it's a great de-stressor. I promise you.
That it is. That's funny. So, let me ask you, when you think about raising awareness and helping to amplify the voice of the Black LGBTQIA community,
Mhm.
what are some strategies that you um, try to use to make sure that the message is clear?
That's a very good question. First and foremost, I realize it starts with me, right? In terms of education and knowledge, I don't know everything. I don't profess to know everything. I'm not an expert in the community by no means.
Hmm.
However, what I will say is one of the reasons why the transgender community is such a passion project or love project for me is because I took the time to sit with some transgender siblings and ask questions. I'd never really encountered, I'm not of the trans experience, so I've never encountered anyone that was, and they allowed me to ask questions. What was your journey like? What was how was your journey through this community? What did you experience? What did you encounter? What do you want me as a sibling to take away from that? How
Hmm.
can I support and be an ally, a true ally of the trans community? And I did that during the pandemic. Again, I did that with all of the letters that I could find. If I could come in contact with anybody, asexual, intersexual, lesbian, gay, even other gay men, like having
Hmm.
conversations about what the trajectory of their experience was. Because again, I realize I'm not the token gay, right? Everybody's experience is not my experience, right? I
Yes.
was not thrown out like some of my other siblings that, visiting family or what have you, having those situations. So I really wanted to have honest conversations with those members of the community to say, okay, hey, I don't know what your experience is like. How can I help you?
Mm-hmm.
And I think to your question, education is paramount when it comes to really really showing up for the community. And thinking of other people. Right. I think we get in our silos in our under our letters of the community, and we say, okay, I'm a black gay male, these are the intersections that I sit in, and this is the only
Mm-hmm.
intersection that I sit in, and I'm not familiar, and I don't care, and it's not that you don't care, but your attitude puts out there that you don't care about anyone else in the community. And I think that's the beginning of showing up for others, and that's the beginning of understanding you know, experiences that are not your own. I
True.
heard a quote recently that said, if you call yourself an ally to someone in the community and you're not standing close enough to them to be pelted by the stones that are thrown at them, then you're not
And you're not
considered
an
an
ally.
ally. Yeah.
This is true. That is so true. Um, I love that. And I think it's important, and I'm glad you did mention that too. It is important to find those ways and not necessarily find those ways, but be open to asking the questions and hearing the responses because
Hmm.
you can't help somebody if you don't listen to them to what their needs are
Yeah.
or what their experience is.
And not, not asking, not ask like genuinely asking, maybe I should say, right?
Yeah.
I think the hot button topics of conversation now amongst our community is, well, I mean, specifically around pronouns, right? If you don't know someone's pronouns, a lot of people say, well, just ask, but it's how you ask too. It's how you approach, members of the community. And let's be very clear and very honest. The trans community, the intersex community, the asexual community, etc., they don't owe you a class. They don't owe you to teach you anything. And
Hmm.
so, how you approach them and how you have conversations with them is important, because they don't you can Google this information, you can do the research on your own, but it's really how you approach them and how you have a conversation with them that's genuine, and they understand that you are really just trying to learn more or less than trying to patronize them.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. All right. So, are there any, and I know that you've done a great deal of work, right? Are
Mhm.
there any collaborations or partnerships that you can think of that really stood out for you, as far as giving you like maybe aha moments or that you really felt full from? I'm sure each one has given you something, but any that
Yeah,
stand out?
yeah, I think to your point, each of them do fulfill me in some un unexpected way,
Hmm.
right? I still don't know what it's all about, right? I still don't have a grasp on my reach or my influence. I try to be as humble as I possibly can, because I don't really have a direction of where all this is going to go, right? But I will say that, some of the rooms that I have been able to enter into, or tables that I've been able to sit at, just for my mere influence and or expertise, however far they think that goes, has really been fulfilling and giving perspective that people wouldn't think of.
Hmm.
Right. So let me just kind of give you an example. Sitting at the Atlanta Pride table has, it's only been for a couple of months now, but sitting at that table specifically and shedding light on the Black queer experience,
Hmm.
as opposed to, you know, another community's experience, has really been rewarding for me to say, hey, when you're planning, did you think about this for the community as a whole, not just the
Mhm.
Black queer community, but it benefits the Black queer community in that aspect.
Mhm.
Um, and then running into people who know who I am that I have no idea who they are, but because I have,
That
influenced them in
reach.
some kind of way, or that I've had some reach in some kind of way, they immediately come to me and they're just like, I am so proud. I see what you're doing. I appreciate what you're doing, and it really means a lot to the community. That really those moments stand out for
Well, we talked a bit about this, right? As far as the concern with you serving on multiple boards.
me. Yeah.
But outside of that, have you been met with any criticisms or any, um, I guess, opposition, if you will, for what you're trying
So
to do?
the oppositions that I have heard have all first and foremost have been hearsay. And I didn't, it wasn't brought to me. I happened to
Got it.
ask trusted advisors that I have in the community, and they're just like, well, I wasn't going to say anything, but yeah, my phone rang off the hook, or yeah, they are talking about you over here in this corner. And it's kind of
Uh-huh.
like, okay, cool. Listen, at the end of the day, any publicity is good publicity, whether it's good or bad.
Now, that is true because you can always make it do what you need it to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I also learned, and I've learned from another community leader that I admire, my silence can't be misquoted.
Mm.
You cannot say that Dwayne said or Dwayne reacted to anything. And so I really don't respond to a lot of things. I'll see them. I'll be like, okay, cool. That's what they think. That's
Mhm.
great. But you're not gonna get a response from me. I'm not really that guy. Listen, I'll do what I'm doing over here, and then when you see it later, and you're like, dang, that really worked out. Sure did.
Right. That's why I was quiet.
Yeah, absolutely. My silence. I love that quote so much from one of my leaders. My silence can't be misquoted. So you're never gonna get me to respond to anything that I don't want to respond to. How about that?
Okay. So nobody was like, well, he played that role where he did that thing. I don't
Oh,
know about him.
oh, no, no, no. There were several things, several puzzle pieces that they tried to put together that absolutely made no sense whatsoever. Specifically about how I was chosen for the Atlanta Pride Board.
Oh,
And I
okay.
think I thought it was hilarious the way that they tried to like piece stuff together. I was
Hmm.
like, that one has absolutely nothing to do with the other, and that's really hilarious.
That's funny. But the narratives and the stories,
Yes. Even
we
if I
got to
wasn't
be
doing anything, they would create their own narrative about me. So it doesn't really matter.
true. Um, so we tapped on home life, right? So
Yeah.
you're married, you have a partner, right?
I have a partner. We're not married yet, but
Not yet.
soon
Oh,
come, maybe.
okay. Well, we'll be there when
Listen,
everything happens.
let's
We got to
go.
be there.
I
So
do. I just to answer your question, I do have a partner. We've been together for 4 years.
that's amazing,
Yeah.
right? Black representation of love in our community means everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you keep it balanced? How do you keep your boo satisfied while still giving so much of you
That is a really good
outside?
question, and I'm glad you asked because I think a lot of the times he gets kind of brushed under the rug by some folks because they're just like Dwayne, Dwayne, Dwayne. But number one, he is fully supportive of everything that I do. If I said, "Hey, we got to go down to City Hall and sit on the steps," okay, what time I need to be there? Like that is his
Oh,
response.
yeah,
And the truth is that when we met, I wasn't doing all of this. So it
got it.
it really, is a testament to how much he loves and appreciates me.
Because he had to make some adjustments.
And he absolutely. And so just for context, if I could give our little back love story, we're both flight attendants.
Okay.
And he had been apparently, and this is oblivious to me. I don't know this side of the story, but this is how he tells the story. He had been following me on social media. He had known who I was. And I was just like, yeah, when you have social media friends, you don't really engage with everybody, but you kind of see folks that like all of your photos or has something to say every time you post something, but it was oblivious to me. It doesn't really matter. So I happened to be flying with one of his friends, and we happened to run into him at one point in time during our rotation or our trip, and I was completely like, "Yeah, okay, I'm going over here. I'm about to get something to eat. We only have a couple of minutes. I need to, you know." And so he was just like, "Hey, I'm, you know, who I am," and I was like, "Oh, nice to meet you," and I kept it moving because I was hungry. Um, and at the end of their conversation, because again, I was flying with one of his friends, he said, "Oh, let's take this picture," and we took a picture. I don't remember this picture. I was like, this picture doesn't exist. He still has the picture to this day. And so when he started approaching me, and like,
Yeah.
so how he approached me is there are flight attendant groups on social media. And so one of the groups decided that they wanted to do a group trip to The Price is Right in LA. So we
Hmm.
all, you know, and these are different airlines, so it's not just one sole airline. So we all, when it was about 25 of us who went to The Price is Right, he happened to be on that trip. I recognized him on that trip, and I was like, "Oh yeah, you know, good to see you," or whatever. Didn't think anything of it. We get back here to Atlanta, and he's like, "Hey, you want to, you know, go on a date?" And I was like, "I mean, okay, cool, you know." And
You know
we've
you
been,
wanted to. You wanted to go on that
you
date.
know, we've been dating ever since. So it's been 4 years. And again, you know, in the trajectory of our relationship, he, you know, is a flight attendant, but he decided he wanted to go to nursing school. So then supporting him through his endeavors, because he was so supportive of mine, I immediately
Hmm.
was like, well, what do you want to do? Like, do you want to
Hmm.
do something outside of what you're doing? And he's like, I think I want to go to nursing school. And he literally, during the pandemic, found a program to enroll in and is getting ready to graduate Mother's Day weekend. So
Wow.
we thank you. I've definitely shared that with him. But it's really been about supporting each other,
Yeah.
unapologetically showing up. As I mentioned earlier, as we were talking, we celebrate our anniversary, his birthday, and Valentine's Day all in the same. You know, so we make sure that we're intentional about our time.
Hmm.
If his schedule is kind of askew, and my schedule is definitely, excuse me, crazy, we prioritize time. Like, okay, well, we have this morning time. Let's go for breakfast, or we have this time that we can kind of sneak in to have dinner, or you know, meet or talk, and we talk all day. So it's really about prioritizing our time and making sure
Right.
that the other feels supported. And check-ins, we do a lot of check-ins with each other to be like, hey, you know, you good, you okay, how was today, how were your tests, are you having some trouble studying, like what, let's talk it out. You know, we really prioritize time because we know our schedules are absolutely crazy.
Mhm, mhm. It's the checking in and seeing how you're doing with pursuing your dream for me. Like, I love that. You're
Yeah.
engaged and you know that the tests are probably a lot or it can be stressful. So just finding that time to check in and like, hey, you good? Your test going okay? I love that. I
And
love
being
that.
consistent, right? Because when he started this journey, I would text him first day of school. First day of school, I know you got it this semester. You're gonna do great. You know, every test, you got this, babe. You can do this. Like being that coach or that cheerleader on the side,
Yes.
is just my personal way of making sure that he knows that I'm invested in his journey just as much as he's invested in mine. And, you know, uh not thinking my journey is lost on him either. You know, just making sure, and being an individual. Like I still have my individual therapy sessions. I still, you know, because I we come into relationships as individuals, and
Yes.
you're trying to mirror your relationship, you know, your lives together. But I'm still Dwayne. I'm always going to be Dwayne, and I still need to make sure Dwayne is okay. So I still have. I mean, while we're embarking into couples therapy, not because anything's wrong, but because we want to make sure that we maintain, you know, what we started.
Yeah.
But I also have my own therapy. I have my own mental health to consider and make sure that I'm taken care of as well.
I love that. And that means so much. And how can I put it? So, well, my husband and I, we've been together. Actually, this year will make 20 years for us.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. I told
That
him, look,
is
I gave you my last two good teenage years, all of my 20s. You working on my 30s. Your ass ain't going nowhere now. I mean, you can hang it up.
listen. I
Like,
love that.
but for so long, what I did not know how to, I guess, convey was that I needed to work on my identity, right? You
Mm-hmm.
know, a lot of times we put things down for the relationships that we're in,
Mm-hmm.
and we have this I'll get back to it mentality. And no, because I'll get back to it just keeps going, and then next thing you know, you have resentment.
Yeah.
So
Because of
taking
you, I didn't get to do X, Y, and Z. Yeah.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
yes. So taking care of you, keeping your therapy sessions, or even if you haven't, starting your therapy sessions because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's needed. And even
Yeah.
if it's just to give you peace of mind with how you're conducting yourself throughout your days, why not, you know?
Yeah. One of the things that I told him when we first started dating is that I need to see you in all seasons.
Ooh, come on now.
I need to see you when you're happy, when you're sad, when it's
Yes,
raining outside, when it's sunny,
yes,
when you experience death, when you experience love, when you experience loss, when you experience I need to see all of those aspects in order to determine if, I want to be along for the ride.
yes.
And that really kind of set the trajectory of our relationship. Like, and it was no rush. Like, everyone's like, when are y'all gonna get married? When are y'all gonna do this? When are y'all gonna? Well, when are you gonna pay for it? Are
Right.
you? If you asking, are you? Are y'all gonna fit these bills?
Right.
Why y'all want to come to a wedding and look cute and neat? Like, come on now. This is not. It is not cheap. So I think in our own time, we've really set our own pace to our relationship and really, make sure that we're giving of each other, but we're also taking care of ourselves.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Oh, yes. Now, let me ask you something. When you refer to our trans community or queer community or what have you, I noticed you say siblings a lot.
Hmm.
Why do you say siblings?
Because of our non-binary brothers and sisters, and I say brothers and
Yes,
sisters because that's normal. But again, if they identify as non-binary, then they're siblings. They're not either or in
either
gender.
or. Yeah,
So I try the best I can. And again, I'm not the blueprint. I am not the best. I'm learning just like everybody else.
yeah, we're
But
learning.
siblings is a bit more acceptable for all, specifically for our non-binary siblings.
Got it. I kind of figured that, but I wanted you to be able to explain it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, it's about respect. I may not understand it, but I respect you. So at least
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do what I have to do to respect you. And I think that's where we lose people. I can't get with the pronouns. I can't get with the, identities of all of the letters of the community, the LGBTQ, ABCD. Like that, to me, that is so offensive.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you identify in that letter group, just call them by their letter group or just call them by their pronouns. It's respect,
Or at the
right?
very least by their name.
Or by their name. You want somebody
Yeah.
to respect you. You don't want anybody to call you out your name. So they're just asking you to do the same. That's all. And even if you don't understand it, it's your responsibility to do the research on it.
Mm. All right now.
Yeah, our people can be a little bit much when it comes to change and it comes to
Yes.
difference, right?
Yes. What they say, the alphabet people.
I guess
It's like really.
it really annoys me as if I am. It annoys me. It does.
Yeah.
But I listen. Everybody's not going to get with it, so you have to get with the people you need to get with and move on.
True. True. So, when you look at, I guess, your impact and your reach, and of course, you're still becoming one with it, right? And I
Mhm.
love that you mentioned earlier that you remain humble. And I think a lot of times it's very important for us to remain humble because just as quick as it's given, it can be taken. Looking at your impact, what are some, or have you had any moments where you're like, oh my God, this is kind of surreal. Like I'm doing something's happening here, you know?
Yeah, yeah. When I get to travel,
Yeah.
and impact outside of Atlanta.
Mhm.
That becomes a little surreal for me.
Mhm.
um, when people want my input, like in moments like these, they want to hear from me in some form of fashion. It's a bit
Mhm.
surreal for me, because I have to then say, Dwayne, you do have a voice. You do have something of value to add to the
Mhm.
community. And while I'm still figuring it out on my own, again, as you mentioned, and as I said, I like to remain humble because, again, I realize I'm not the president of the gays. I don't, I'm still learning, and I have no choice but to remain humble.
Yeah.
And that creates longevity.
True. True. So, corporate employee resource groups, or
Yeah.
the well, yeah, the corporate resource groups. So, I've seen that you've done a lot. We kind of touched on it a bit. To you, what's the importance of utilizing those groups to further amplify our messages?
Yeah, I think what's really great about employee resource groups, and they call them either employee resource groups or business resource groups, depending upon what company you're a part of. But it really gives voice to, not just the LGBTQ community, because they have several different kinds of employee resource groups. Like there is an African American one, excuse me, there's a women's one, there is a Hispanic. There's so many different groups that companies can have based on their work groups. It's just a matter of, if the company wants to start it, what does that look like?
Mhm.
If there is a need by the employees,
Mhm.
then okay, you take that need and say, okay, how do we formulate this into something that supports our work groups? And so
Mhm.
I think they're incredibly valuable because you then know, number one, who's working for you and what's important to them. And
Mhm.
I like to use this example quite often. Um, within Delta, we have a lot of allies that are also a part of the resource group,
Mhm.
and it's because they have family members at home, or siblings or children that are part of the community, and they come to us as a resource to find information, to gain information, to know how to navigate their relationships with their
Mhm.
said family members or friends. And that's also important because if you're at work, if you think about it, if you're at work and your work is centered around safety, and if there's something going on at home, your mind is going to be focused on what's happening at home and not on what they're paying you to do, on your 9 to 5. Thus, that can jeopardize productivity, that can jeopardize, economics. It can jeopardize a lot of things. So, if you have a space in your workspace that allows you to be able to learn, to grow, to gain information so that you can
Mhm.
ease your mind for what's going on at home, that's it, an even better productivity for the company itself.
True. We're starting to see the payoff from those that came before us.
Hmm.
All the work that they did. Even with you, you're a trailblazer. So we pay it forward, but I think a part of what we're seeing now with the resource groups, even with my nieces and nephews, they're in high school, they
Hmm.
have pride resource groups or I'm like, oh my God, I wish I'd had this when I was in school.
Same.
It's
Yeah,
amazing. It's
yeah.
amazing.
That and it's this generation, Gen Z specifically. I want to say the last stat that I found, I believe 28%, or somewhere between 28% and 71% of this generation identifies with the LGBTQ community in some form or fashion,
I saw those stats. Yes.
right? And it's amazing to me that that is what's going to, companies have to pay attention to that.
Mhm.
These are your next employees.
Mhm.
And if you don't have a resource for them, they're immediately going to be like, well, what are your values? You don't value our community, then I don't want to work for you.
Mhm. Mhm. True. Interesting.
Yeah.
So, um Shifting a bit. So going back to uh, the m- the Trans Life Awards, I should say.
Yeah.
What do you see happening? What are your plans for the upcoming year and years ahead? What do you want to happen there?
So this year, number one, I have a great team that ties into my personal company, which is Swank Arts and Entertainment. And so it allows me to be able to do an event in tandem with Atlanta Black Pride and my company that does, just for context, Swank Arts and Entertainment is an events logistics company. So we do all kinds of, planning and execution of events, but it allows me to do something of my own under my own company. And
Mm-hmm.
so I really would love to see it just be national. I would love to be able to travel with it in other cities,
Mm-hmm.
and allow the trans community to be celebrated in other cities as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of we're in year four. Next year, obviously, is year five, and then we can kind of talk about branching out into pride organizations, other pride organizations, and kind of shopping it too. Not all of them, but
Yeah.
just some.
Okay.
Um, Televised, maybe, in year whenever, but just something that really kind of cements the black trans experience. And
Right.
it's been very well receptive by the community, by the way. We've honored some major trans siblings like Hope Giselle and Raquel Henry and Raquel Thomas, Elijah Nicholas, T.S. Madison. We have really, even the trans community that you're not familiar with in corporate America or in finance, or and just seeing them celebrated and seeing them honored for the work that they're doing just means so much to me, because you
Okay.
see their obituaries more than you see their celebrations,
Oh, amen.
right? And so, what would have happened if we were able to honor them before they lost their lives?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. You are changing the world. You know that,
Oh
right?
my goodness.
You are helping to change the world. No lie.
I appreciate
And it's powerful in itself when you just even acknowledge the fact that especially our trans girls, like our trans women, they
that.
alarming rates that they've
Mhm.
lost their lives here recently or in the
Yeah,
past, just looking back.
in the past, yeah.
But to acknowledge, hey, you know what? Let's recognize them while they're here, or let's do what we can to honor the legacies that they're attempting to leave.
Mhm.
Those things matter, and those things will help us change the world, especially with the battles that our trans siblings are having now with basic human rights. So
Absolutely. And not just theirs, ours. Some of these
true.
bills that are happening or that they're trying to pass, specifically here in Georgia, there's a version of a Don't Say Gay or LGBTQ bill that is on the docket. I mean, it also leaves a bit of uncertainty for the work that I'm doing, because if it's this easy for them to target us, what's next,
Mm,
right? And then that goes back to, am I doing enough? Am I saying enough?
mm-hmm,
Am I representing enough? Did I fight enough? Did I, protest enough? Did I write my, legislative leaders and let them know? Like, all of those things really matter.
mm-hmm,
And I think, we think that our voice doesn't matter, but it absolutely does.
mm-hmm,
And if we came together in the influence and the buying power that we have as a community, it truly does make a difference. And we see that when we rally around someone that we don't want to be president, right?
mm-hmm,
We
mm-hmm.
automatically come together when we see that figure changed. But it's really about your local leaders. Who are you
True.
putting in position locally that really have the influence and the voice and the change? And do they know what you stand for? Do they know what you're passionate about? Do they know how it affects your family and your chosen family?
Come on now. Yes.
Yeah.
Those are questions we should be asking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I call, and it's funny because I know a bit of our community leaders. I'm very close with, our LGBTQ liaison to our mayor, and I check him all the time. Hey, what are you doing? What
Hmm.
are we doing? You know, even some of our politicians. Hey, you're smiling. You love to come through when you need our vote, but when we
Hmm.
need our voices heard, are you answering your phone? Are you answering your emails? I sent you an email last week. Where you at? You know, you have to be able to call them on the carpet for the job they said they were going to do.
Right. I love it. Let me ask you something, and this may be kind of random.
Yeah.
Looking back, say 16-year-old Dwayne,
Cool.
could you imagine yourself having these words leave your lips right now?
No, no. 16-year-old Dwayne was just trying to get through life. Because life was life in around 16.
Hmm.
But it's interesting. I never envisioned being a community leader.
Hmm.
It's not something that was on my bingo card. I was not, I just kind of happened to stand in this place.
Hmm.
I'm grateful to stand in this place, but it's not something that, and I think that's where my humility remains, right? Because it's not something that I sought after.
Hmm.
And truthfully, Dwayne doesn't really think that he is. He ain't nobody. He just like to be at the house and chill. Like I
And
don't
play with
really look at myself in that aspect. I mean, I see it's a part of me, and I see
you.
that it's growing, and I see that it has its space and its place. But you're only good as your last, you know, celebration or triumph. And so, giving an example, okay, I'm a part of the Atlanta Pride Board. That was cool. That was great. What's next?
Right.
Right? What am I like? I can say I'm a part of all these boards. What are we about to do next? And I think that is something that again keeps me humble and it keeps me, kind of focused on. Okay, you did what you needed to do. And harmony is something that I really pride myself on. I used to say that I like to keep things in balance, but
Hmm.
scales tip, right?
True.
Harmony locks in. You can't change these notes. They have to lock in a certain way in order for you to harmonize. And so I
Hmm.
like to make sure that my life is in harmony with whatever it is that I'm doing. And the minute that it doesn't serve me, all right, it's time to go. So I think to your point, even the minute that this community work doesn't fulfill me, doesn't excite me, doesn't make me feel like I'm making a change or doing something better for the world, it's time to hang it up.
Hmm. Hmm. I understand that. Or at least even grab that hand and pull somebody behind you. And
Absolutely. And
yeah.
that's something that we don't do. Listen, can we talk about gatekeeping for a minute? I can't
Yes.
stand it. I cannot it I don't because I don't understand the concept. I don't understand the concept of gatekeeping. I also don't understand the concept of what can you do for me mentality. I get that a lot because people think they see and they hear president of LGBTQ, what have you, with Delta Airlines.
Hmm.
And I think it's that last part where they're just like, "Ooh, uh, I got this thing. Can you sponsor this? Or can
Right.
you?" I, I'm gonna say this publicly, and wherever it goes, it goes. I do not own the purse strings of Delta Airlines. I don't have access. I have people like let me not say I don't have access. I have people I can email and inquire, but
Hmm.
I don't have the access to their purse strings.
Hmm.
I can and here's the thing that people misconstrue with corporate America.
Yeah.
It doesn't belong to me. And so if they decided that they want to do something completely different, that is their prerogative. and I
Mm-hmm.
have to be okay with it, right? And I think that people miss that, but they see that president of I don't own it. It does not belong to me. I can suggest and you know uh, presentations all day long on why it's important, but if they decide that they don't want to do it, they don't want to do it. But
Mm-hmm.
the reality is that like I get that a lot. People just think I and or I say, hey, I would love to collaborate in this form of fashion, and they
Mm-hmm.
gatekeep the thing that needs to project the community forward.
Mm-hmm.
I realize it's not about me, because if it wasn't me, somebody else would be in the same position doing exactly what I'm doing. In fact, somebody else is, right?
True. Well, why do you think that is, though? Why do you think that is
That
that
people
they
gatekeep
that they
or
gatekeep?
fear.
Uh.
I think it's fear of, because it takes us a lot long. I mean, we know this. It takes us as a, black, queer, or whatever intersection you want to label at that particular moment. It
Mm-hmm.
takes us, 50 times, 75% times harder to achieve, some
Mm-hmm.
things as opposed to our white counterparts, right?
True.
And speaking of our white counterparts, there is still a level of privilege that they receive. Just because we're queer does not mean that we are in the same playing field.
Mm-hmm.
You still have privilege, you still have access that we don't have, that we still have to prove and show and prove in
Mm-hmm.
order to belong in some spaces, right? Let's
True.
call a thing a thing. And so I think it is fear of losing the position and the space that they occupy. Because if I bring you into my space, you could potentially push me out of the nest, so to speak.
Yes.
Right? That's the mentality that we have. But
True.
in reality, and this is why, to me, sitting in the intersections of Atlanta Pride and Atlanta Black Pride and the Outreach Business Alliance, Delta, and all of these spaces is important because I'm going to show you, I don't, you're not going to push me out of the nest. We're going to sit in this nest together and we're going to figure out how to fly together.
Yes.
So if I bring
That's
you along, I love the ability to be able to impart knowledge, impart experience, impart, things to other people and generations behind me because ultimately you're going to do it bigger and better than I did. That's the
and
goal.
that's the goal.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not fearful because again, as I just told you, the minute that it's not satisfying to Dwayne, it has to go. But that's being secure and having my mental health intact to say I am not the work that I do. My work doesn't define me,
Mm-hmm. And
right?
it's a piece of it is understanding the bigger picture because
Yeah,
it's not about you per se more than it's about us, our experience
absolutely.
being who we
Absolutely.
are in America, needing the resources we need, needing the platforms that we need. And that's what and I'm glad we touched on this because starting the podcast platform, right? And
Mhm,
it you're trying to find your space, find
mhm,
your niche, right?
mhm,
But one thing I promised myself with this and I try to hold true to it every day. Like I want those people who are not afraid to pull people along with them because we need the visibility and we're getting better with having the visibility, but are we using it in the way that it should be used so that we're taken seriously, so that we're able to better secure those resources or better able to inspire those people that, the whole nine. So, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
and I'll tell you specifically for the podcast entertainment space, for those that may recognize me from Affairs of the Heart, I had a really great podcast with two other gentlemen. And it started out as a podcast, and then we did, video. It was a live podcast situation every Thursday night, and I coined it the sex ed class for the queer community that we never had, and we talked about sex 11 relationships from the Black queer community specifically. And it was very popular, more
Mhm.
popular than I thought that it actually was. But even then, I still get messages from people that said, "Hey, we loved you. Come back. Are you guys working on something? Yada yada yada." But to your point, in carving out space and having your own niche, the interesting thing is there's space for everyone. There
Yeah.
is not one finite way for entertainment for the Black queer community. Everyone has a special story, has a special space, and you will find your audience specifically. Right? There are people that are going to gravitate to you, towards you, just because of the name, and then they'll learn who you are and the context and the content that you want to create.
Mhm.
And
True.
that there's room for everybody, and I think we get lost in that. Like we see one group of the community that's extremely popular that has a podcast, and you think that's how you do it. Well, there's also people a part of the community that don't identify with them, but they may
Mhm.
identify with you, and you have
Mhm.
to put it out there. I like to tell people all the time, you never know until you actually jump and see what it's like.
True.
You can
True.
assume from someone else's experience, but at the end of the day, you never know until you put it out there. And there's some, if one person is affected and infected by what you have said and is changed because of your experience or your knowledge or your wealth, then you've done your job.
You've done your job.
Yeah.
True. All right. So, with you transitioning into this arena with being this community leader, because you are, um, how did you see people show up to kind of help you, lead you ahead, or lead you in the right direction, or did you see that a lot, and where
Well,
did it
I
come
am I am such of a person that I observe everything. I
from?
see everything. I'm a Sag. So I see everything. I hear everything. I observe everything. I
Mhm.
acknowledge everything. And so I started watching community leaders that I personally admire long before I was in this space.
Okay.
Not to copy any of their experiences or try to be like them per se, but I just admired what they were doing, whether they were
Mhm.
doing it silently or whether they were doing it publicly. And
Mhm.
so there are several community leaders that I admire, and they probably don't even know. They don't probably don't even know who I am. But then there are others that I admire that know who I am, and I glean from, and I learn from, and I listen to.
Mhm.
Terrence Stewart is one of those. He is the president of Atlanta Black Pride, and
Mhm.
I just call him my big brother. And we talk about, you know, the trajectory of things and how I've been moving as of lately. And he's fully supportive
Mhm.
because he understands the bigger pictures we talked about earlier. He understands, I'm just being number one, I'm being myself, but number two, I am just creating space for us to all work together. And I think that's
Yes.
what's missing a lot of the times within our community, as I've mentioned before. We don't create the opportunity in the space, and that's really all that we need a lot of the times.
True.
And so, there's folks like the Terrence Stewarts, there's the Rashard Burgesses and O.C. Allens, there's the Tony Michelle Williamses, there's the Elijah Nicholases, there are, the J. Megs, all of these folks, Alfonso and Jamel Aware, like all of them are local community folks that I have just learned from, that I've gleaned from, that I've listened to, that I've just learned their experiences to learn more about the trajectory of how I want to show up as a community leader. Nationally, the Hope Giselles. If you pay attention to Hope, like Hope is number one. Hope is my sister. Like
Mhm.
there is love every time I see. As a matter of fact, I just saw her at the BET Black and Iconic celebration, and I didn't know she was going to be there. And she walked by, and I said, "Is that my Hope Giselle?" And she was like, "It absolutely is." And she's just a great person. If you don't follow Hope, please follow her. And if you want to learn not only about the trans community, but the queer community in general, if there's things that are happening in your community, she loves to break down. specific information for us to just have more wealth, which is our knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there are a lot of there's a slew of folks. I know I miss some, but there are definitely people that I pay attention to.
Got it. So what should we be on the lookout for from you, Dwayne, or that you're involved in
Oh, um,
that you can release? But then
in
if you want to drop a spoiler or something like that or some breaking news, that's cool too.
a couple of weeks, I'm getting ready to do straight play. I'm getting ready to do a Raisin in the Sun. Um,
Really?
and so I'm
Wow.
really, really excited to be back on stage, and I'm really excited to kind of flex those stage muscles again here in Atlanta. So it's just, if I'm not mistaken, the weekend of March 15th and 16th, so that Friday and that Saturday. Um, and if you follow me, I'll post all of that information. But I'm really excited to kind of pick up an old love, right? You put it on the back burner for a little while, and you hope to get back to it, like you said earlier. And so that's one of the things that I'm getting back to something that I really enjoy.
That's cool. That is really cool. All right. So Swank Arts and
Swank,
Entertainment, what do we have
yeah.
coming up?
Swank is gearing up for the fourth annual Trans Life Awards, and we are doing some bidding. Just for context, the reason I started Swank is I was an independent contractor as an artist, mover, and talent handler for the Essence Music Festival, and I've done that since 2003.
I did
Um,
see that you've done that. That's
yeah.
amazing, by the
And
way.
so, thank you. That was just a happenstance situation. Like somebody was like, "Hey, you want to do this?" And I was like, "Okay." And they just kind of kept inviting me back. But from that, I started Swank Arts Entertainment. So, bidding for festivals and events. So if you have major events or you have concerts or tours and you need event logistics or management or planning, strategic planning for your events, that is what Swank Arts and Entertainment does. You can check out swankartsent.com and set up a consultation with me, and we can talk about planning. And there's no big or small. Essence is huge, yes, but we also do conferences and festivals and all the things of that nature. And so this year we're just strategically planning and kind of in the midst of everything else that I'm doing, planning for like summer festivals and events and bidding for those currently.
That's cool. That's cool. Any lasting words? I fear I've kept you
Yeah,
too long.
I thank you again. I really appreciate you giving me the space and opportunity on your platform. I know, as we've mentioned about gatekeepers, I really know that it's sometimes you're very protective of your baby, and so I'm very appreciative and thank you. I hope that we can, connect more in the future and really, do some more work. So thank you.
Of course. I'm still learning how to take take it all in.
Say thank you.
But
Hmm.
yes, yes. But thank you for joining us. Family, if you've not already, go ahead, make sure you're following Dwayne Q, Swank Arts and Entertainment, and the Trans Life Awards.
Hmm.
You're doing amazing things. We appreciate you.
If you
We
have anybody that you want to nominate for the Trans Life Awards in Atlanta, please send them my way as well. If there's anybody in the community that you think needs to be honored for the work they're doing, and we honor the members of the transgender community and allies. If there is an ally that you think is doing specific work to support and undergird the trans life community, please don't hesitate to honor them. Mention them and or send me their information as well.
Cool. Well, you
Yeah.
heard it here. So stay tuned. We look for major things to happen from you and we support you. Hopefully you'll come back and join us again, okay?
Anytime you need me.
All right, family. That's it for today. We appreciate you. Love.